Miss Shaun Robinson, I
Yes. Hi, Matt. Great to see you.
22 years. 22
You're
years.
not supposed to put a number on it.
You're right.
You just
I
say
I
you
know.
just say it was recently.
You know what's so funny? So I was just talking about you with our mutual friend Tony Potts.
Tony, love me some Tony Potts. That's my
Oh, and
brother.
he goes, but it was a funny story because he said the exact same thing because I used the term, "Hey, I'm going to be um I'm going to be joining your old friend again," and he goes, "That's so awesome, but don't say old friend." He said, "Don't say old friend. Don't do that."
He knows it. He knows it because he gets in trouble if he talks years.
And I'm like, between both of you, there's no two better people that I would like to take direction from in my own experience of
Thank you.
interviewing. And I mean, it's such a true honor. I can't tell you. And I told myself, Matt, don't be all cheesy. Like, just be professional when you're talking to Shaun. But I can't
Well,
help it because it's been,
it's been so
it's been
long,
a,
and you look the same.
well, thank you. Thank
You
you.
not a just your you look just as handsome as you've always been.
And now you're making me blush. Of course, I know you hear this all the time, but you are always looking smashing,
Thank you.
and I've been a fan since having the opportunity to work with you at Access Hollywood way
Thank
back
you.
then. And I am one of so many that you have graciously given your time to when I was like, "Shaun, could you listen to my new CD or could you leave a quote?" And you're like, "Yes." And it just
Sure.
it means the
Absolutely.
world.
Well, I am so proud of you too. I mean, you are an incredible artist, and I love seeing, your new chapters, additional chapters of your life. And thank goodness for social media. As
Mm,
much as we talk about social media, remember when I started at Access Hollywood in 1999,
99, that's right.
there was no Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. That we didn't have any of that.
It's amazing.
And so we were there before social media. So now we get to keep up on our friends. And so it doesn't really seem that long because you're coming up in my feed, but I'm so happy for you and all that you're doing. And I'm just glad we have a chance to reconnect.
I, when you're talking about social media, and I
Mhm.
remember you said this before, and I think it was another interview about, when you were going through this and you started building your career, you did not have social media. You did
No,
not have, I mean, going back to Detroit, right?
Detroit,
And
Michigan.
Detroit, Michigan, where you, but I have to ask, you've done so much with mentoring and you've done so much with inspiring, especially women, especially young girls. Um, what was it like to tune in on that TV as a young Shaun Robinson and see Beverly Payne on the TV?
So, for those people who are not familiar with the name Beverly Payne, I'm born and raised Detroit, Michigan. That's where I went to school, my high school years. But when I was in elementary school, I would come home after school, and sometimes I would stay at my grandmother's house because my school was closer to her house. And, I'd watch my cartoons, Speed Racer, the Jetsons, the Munsters, Little Rascals, you watching all those cartoons. And then my grandmother would turn on the evening news. And there was an anchor, a female anchor named Beverly Payne. And I never met Beverly Payne, but I she had such a profound influence on my life. I remember watching her as a little kid, like 8 years old, and just knowing she was different because she looked like me. She had my skin tone. She, just looked like, what I saw in the mirror. And she was the first African American female newscaster in Michigan, I think,
Wow.
but definitely in Detroit. So, and it's so interesting as a kid, I didn't know that, oh, she's the only Black person. It just was a connection that I
Interesting.
felt. So, and this proves that when you see something, that's why it's so important to mentor, because when you see it and when people tell you, show you that you can do it, it's like the door is open and the ceiling is smashed. And it's like you say, okay, I can go for this because I've seen somebody who looks like me accomplish it. So that was really very, very important. But yeah, so as I said, I never met Beverly Payne, but she was the first person who started me on the path to becoming a journalist.
And it's so, in going through your path of journalism and from Detroit, and I know you went to Spelman College, which you keep in touch with all your sisters there. It's so,
I just got off a call for our reunion because our reunion is coming up. So I was just on the call for our reunion. So I'm always repping Spelman College in Atlanta.
it's so cool though, because you always go back to where you came from. I love how when you talk about the Detroit and your mom and your dad and the influence and coming, there's something about, like, I think of Motown and I think
Yeah.
of, I mean, this is the Supremes and the Jackson 5 and
Yeah.
Marvin Gaye and Shaun Robinson,
Well,
and
well, well, you
I
wouldn't put me in that same category
I
if you heard me sing.
I've heard now, which is interesting. It's interesting you say that because I can't remember if it was with Daryl Miller. You did an interview podcast and they said, now listen, I hear you are a very good singer, but you said, as long as the mic's not on me. Am I right on that?
Long as the mic is not turned on. I was on this game show called Don't Forget the Lyrics. And you had to sing the song. And the whole thing was, you had to know the lyrics of the song. And I was just up there singing my little heart out. And folks they were like, okay, Shaun. I didn't sound good, but I had a lot of fun. So, it's a blessing. You have a gift. You have a real gift. I didn't get that gift, but yes, I didn't get that. But back to just Motown and Detroit
Yeah.
and the Midwest, just the Midwestern
Mm.
tenacity and the hardworking people that I saw and the role models that I had growing up. Detroit has been through its ups and downs,
Hmm.
and I love seeing that that it's experiencing this renaissance
Yeah,
now in
it
Detroit.
is.
I love that. But just growing up, it was just such a wonderful place to grow up. And the city was bustling, and you had the auto companies,
Yep.
you had Motown there, so it was the center of so much. And really, Detroit, it's the city that built the middle class with the auto industry.
Absolutely.
People coming up from the South, pursuing a job and a way of life in the auto industry. And I just remember, it's I'm getting so nostalgic, but my parents, we were middle class, and back then, middle class meant you can buy uh you had a house, you had a car, you can
Right.
send your kids to college, you can go on
That's right.
vacation. That was it was that city. And so you saw a lot of very upwardly mobile people who were working for the city, who were working for the car industry, who were working in these different jobs. And it's so interesting how things have changed. But that's how I grew up. That's what my memory is.
And your mom, she worked for the water department, correct? And your dad was a health
Correct.
inspector?
Yes. My mother worked for the Detroit Water Department. My father worked for the health department.
Interesting.
So, and my father, I miss him, God rest his soul.
Yeah.
He was,
Was that 2015, Shaun?
yeah, my
When you
father
did?
passed away in 2015.
I remember seeing those.
2015.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, but he worked for the health department. And when we would go, when I would go back home to Detroit, we would go out to eat, different restaurants, and he would say, "Baby, we're not gonna go to that restaurant. Okay, we'll go to this one." I'm like, "Dad, don't even tell. I don't even want to know. Don't even tell me."
He had the inside scoop.
He had the inside scoop. Yes, yes, he
And ever
did.
since then, now you're the one that has the inside scoop
Right.
with everything. The roles have changed. And it was interesting because when I was, learned a little bit about your parents, but wasn't your next job from Detroit? You went to Flint, Michigan?
Yeah.
And it's
So, well,
interesting because of the water issues there now coming full circle. But what was that like working, taking that first step?
yeah. So my first television job was actually when I was a student at Spelman College.
Nice.
So there was a local cable station, and I'm not. This wasn't HBO cable. This was Wayne's World cable. Okay, and they were looking
Love it
for.
already.
Yeah, I was. Was I a junior? I was either a junior. I think I was a junior. Yes, junior at Spelman College, and I was taking my mass communications courses at Clark College, which was across the street
Okay.
in the AU Center. And so they chose me to host this talk show called, it was there were two. There was something called Inside Open Studio or something like that. I don't remember. But anyway, so it was like the first time that I was actually on TV, and this was a cable station in Atlanta, Georgia.
Wow.
So after that, I went um, during the summer. I went home to Detroit. I interned at a television station in Detroit, WGPR. Channel 62 was an independent station. WGPR stood for Where God's Presence Radiates.
I love it. I love it.
And it was a combination radio and television station. And so then I went back to school my senior year. And after I graduated, I went back to Detroit and worked again, interning at the television station. Then they finally put me on the payroll. And so
I read about that because your internship was not paid, right?
Yeah. You wouldn't get away with that today. I'm telling you.
Well, you're taking me back again to Access because when I interned there, it was non-paid.
Well, you won't get away with that today.
We got some laws that have changed just a little
laws
bit.
have changed because we worked our butts off, let me tell you. And I was let me tell you, interning in Detroit, I was going out there. I was going out on stories and appearing on camera, covering with no pay. Okay.
It's unbelievable to think about that though, because I know how hard you work. Like I saw that just even of all the other affiliates that you've gone through.
Right.
Like even I see that was a blessing to see how hard people like you and Tony work. And to think I'm going back to now your first, because I read that it's non-paid, sometimes part-time on the payroll, and you're doing everything.
Everything. Yes. Appearing on camera, writing, editing stories, producing stories, going out to interview people, all of that. Yeah.
And didn't you have your own show too there?
So yes, while I was still at WGPR, I started a talk show called Strictly Speaking. Yes. And so I was written up in the paper, Detroit's own Oprah, because, Oprah was just getting started back then. Yeah. And so we would interview everybody. Like we would interview the mayor of Detroit, the civic leaders, have fashion shows, talk about social issues. Yeah, it was really a training ground for me, WGPR. And it, taught me how to, like I said, how to write, how to edit, how to report, how to ask questions, all of that. And so it was a really good, it gave me a really good foundation. And, but they won't get away with that today. Right.
So, there's going to be a theme here because it is so, I think, and correct me, Shaun, because I've so much enjoyed reading about your story. You took me back to the Sharon Smith research days of what I've been doing the last week, because she was the one that taught me. Like and I love her, but she was like, Matt, you need to be thorough, and I was. But when I'm researching your story, and I knew quite a bit before this, but wasn't it Aretha Franklin that called into that show? And wasn't she a fan of that
So,
show?
so Aretha and I had a decades long friendship. Um, Remember back then, there wasn't cell phones or anything like that.
Right.
So my talk show, we used to talk about, like I said, all types of issues, and we used to have a relationship expert on the show. There was a particular woman, Dr. Lynn Lewis, God rest her soul. She was an amazing person. But anyway, she would always come on, and we would talk about relationships. I mean, we had a studio audience, and people would be just yelling about relationships, and it was like, why do men cheat?
Oh, yeah.
Interracial dating. Who should do the housework? I mean, like, we were talking about all of this stuff. So the relationship expert would always come on, talk about, how to have a better relationship. And Aretha used to watch the show. And one time she called in and asked to get in touch with the relationship expert, Dr. Lewis. And and Dr. Lewis and I were friends. And so we went to Aretha's, she would have Christmas parties at her house where she would cook, and then she would also sing in the living room. And it was a really, really fun time. It was pretty amazing, but that's how Aretha and I became friends.
And were you at that time, because you're recently coming from college, you know this is a path you want to take. Were you in like those moments of an Aretha Franklin, or did you ever feel like, holy cow, like I'm getting some notice here of what I'm like? Did you ever get excited about that, or
Yeah, it was
did
really
you keep
fun.
it at bay?
Well, I loved, what was interesting about Aretha. In Detroit, we would see Aretha all the time. We would see her at a club. It could be a restaurant, so it was like, there's Aretha. So it wasn't like really a big
Yes.
deal for us because we would see her all the time.
Makes
But
sense.
as our talk show started gaining traction, it was really exciting. It was really nice for my parents to see me on TV, because
That'd be so cool.
that made them really, really proud. And so, reporting on just the day's issues. And there are a lot of people who still live in Detroit. They will say, oh yeah, I remember you on Channel 62.
Oh, yeah.
And the other thing that was really cool about this station, the television station was the first Black owned and operated television station in the country. But it was also a combination radio station.
Okay.
So we would have like Star, and it was a really, really popular radio station. And we would have stars, like any star that was in town in a concert in Detroit, they'd come through. Prince, Smokey Robinson, Shaka Khan, like everybody came through, and we would we'd see them coming down the hallway, and we're like, oh, there's Prince. Oh, there, so yeah, it was it was a pretty fun time.
Well, it sounds like it was the fabric of that environment. Like you're like in that. And I mean, did all of that stuff kind of help form you as you now are? I mean, that was your launching pad. Like,
Yeah,
and
that
you're
was my
already, and you're already in it.
Yeah, that was my and I was, because I was just out of college, and being
Yeah.
able to have this experience was it really helped me in terms of having that foundation, because when we were out, and we were a very, very small television station, but we were out covering the same stories as the major networks were in Detroit.
Right.
So the local Detroit CBS or NBC or ABC stations, we were covering the same stories that they were covering. So that really gave me a good footing and the training that I needed early on in the business.
How did you know then, especially in your line of work, Shaun, in that time? How did you know it was time to try another affiliate station in another town? Like, when did you like, wait a minute, I need to, what were you looking at? Audience reach? Were you looking at was it a gut feel? Was it just an opportunity that comes at a time? Like,
So yeah, after I left, I was at WGPR for 4 years, which is probably like sometimes I think about it, it's like, oh yeah, it should have been really more 2 years and then gone on to the next thing. But I landed at a television station, very small station in Flint, Michigan, outside of Flint. And I was only there 2.5 months as an anchor reporter, where the news director told me, I would never make it in TV and that I need to, get another job and all that. And so I started looking for other jobs while I was still there because I knew that he was, going to fire me soon. And so I found a job in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, the ABC affiliate, and it was as a health reporter. So I was the station's health reporter, and they wanted somebody who did not have like medical experience because they wanted somebody who could explain medical information to people in a very simplistic way, in a way that everybody could understand it. And so was I there for, was I there for four and a half, I think it was probably almost 4.5 years.
And you won an Associated Press award there.
Right? Yes, I won an Associated Press. I won a few awards when I was there. I did a series on headaches. And that's why I'm always empathetic to people who have like chronic headaches and chronic pain, because I remember that series and how so many people really connected with that series. And what else did I win? I won an award for something else. I can't remember. It was so long ago. But after that, well, I left. So I was in Milwaukee, got married, had left my job, then got unmarried after like a year, and then went back to Detroit, living with my parents and kind of starting again. And then found a job. Well, it was interesting because I really had to figure out how to get back in the game. And, when something throws you off course, and you got to really say, okay, how do I get back on track? And so what I did is I went through the yellow pages at that time. Going through the yellow pages, looking at production companies. And so I would call each of the production companies because I didn't have a fresh tape to send anyone. I had
a demo tape to send in.
Right. Yeah. And people were like, oh, what have you been doing the last year? And I was like, oh, well, I was married and then, got divorced. And then, nobody wanted to hear that. They wanted to hear fresh, they wanted to see your fresh tape.
Right.
And no agents would take me or anything. And so, so I found production companies, and back then I was doing industrial films. So the industrial films were films that companies would film for their employees. So like, for example, I did one for Miller Brewery.
Oh,
and
sure.
So, yeah. And so it was something, this is going to make you laugh. As a matter of fact, I had the original tape in my garage. I was cleaning out my garage, and I was getting my tapes digitized. And so and actually I'll send you the, I would
love it. I love seeing all your old stuff that you
I'm sitting there as an anchor, saying, hello, as a Miller salesperson, you have the opportunity to get a new clientele if you do A, B, and C.
Yeah.
And so they cut to a guy coming into a bar, and then you hear this voiceover saying, this is Bob. He's coming into the bar and he's not sure what kind of beer he wants to drink. But then he sees the signage of the Miller brand, and that's your opportunity to get a new customer. And I was looking at this. This is back from the early 90s. Guess who? I'm looking at the tape. The guy that they used to come in the bar it's Sean Hayes from Will and Grace. I said, is that Sean Hayes from Will and Grace? I'm like, yeah, he's like, he looks like a kid. And
I
actually
think you posted this because I
I did.
remember I was like,
I
what?
said,
Like,
yeah. I was like, that's crazy. But
that
yeah,
is funny.
right.
That is funny.
So I was able to use the reels, not that particular one, but then I got a job in Austin, Texas. Yeah, oh, great town, great city as a reporter and anchor. I was there for a year, and then I got a job in Miami at WSVN, the Fox affiliate. I was the morning and noon anchor, getting up at like 3 o'clock in the morning to get to work at 3:30. That's a brutal schedule. God bless those people. That's a brutal schedule.
Well,
So,
and not only are you getting up, like, again, and I don't mean to interrupt, Shaun, but I have to emphasize, because I would watch you. I've watched people like you. The hours, like, people only see this when you're on, but I'm like, you're getting up at 3 in the morning, and then you might have a shoot at 9 o'clock at night
right.
somewhere.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how do you do it? Like,
It's hard. It's hard. Yeah. And then I was living in Miami. So I had to go to bed like at 7 o'clock in order to get up at 3 in the morning. And I remember
in Miami.
In Miami. So I remember leaving my apartment at 3:15 in the morning. People are just coming in from the club. They are passing me, hey, hi, and I'm going to work.
And you're like, what job do I have? I'm going to work. You guys need to go to bed. I'm going to work.
I'm going to work, yeah. And from there, I was in Miami for 2.5 years, and that's when Access Hollywood saw my tape and called me out for an interview, and the rest is history.
You donated time to the Children's Hospital in Austin. And like, what was it that seems that you always give back on your journey?
Yeah, my parents and grandparents always taught me that if God gives you a platform, use it to give back.
Yeah.
And I always saw my grandparents and my parents helping other people. And they just instilled in me that it's not me. It's about the service that I could give others. And it's just always been like that. My mother, my father, my grandparents, it's just always been taught like you're supposed to help other people. And so I kind of grew up realizing that. I remember, now you bring up when I was in Austin, Texas, I used to volunteer in the in Children's Hospital. And so it was my job to go into the toy room, get a wagon or a little rolling table of toys, and I would take it to every single kid's room.
So awesome.
On the floor. And so I would come in, hi, would you, little Johnny like to play with, this bubble, truck or whatever. And so, I mean, Matt, I got to tell you, excuse my language, but
yeah, no, it's
those kids bitch less than people that have everything. They're a kid in a hospital bed, and they complain less than some adults that have just everything.
Why is it? And you would have this purview better than anybody. Like, why is that it sometimes seems like the more people have, or the more successful people become, that inside something's missing, or something is like what, or like they become angry, and I'm like, wait a minute, aren't you know what I mean? Like, aren't you supposed to be happy? Like, look what you have. And that's such a great point. It's such a great and important point.
Yeah. I don't know what it is. I have fallen victim to it also. I'm not exempt from, looking and say, oh, am I enough because somebody has more,
Right.
Um,
And how do you escape that in this social media? Like it's
yeah, well,
constantly on.
it's even, right. I can think about it. Yeah, when you think about social media, it just is constantly telling you that you've got to
Right.
have more stuff to be a valuable person. And I don't know how we get out of that, but my mother always says, I've got a great role model in my mother. She always says, oh, well, that's a blessing. That's a blessing. Like she'll say, oh, guess what? My car broke down, but it was such a blessing that it happened next to a gas station. Oh my gosh, my roof was leaking, but it was such a blessing that I was there so I could put a bucket down
That
and fetch
bucket,
water.
right?
So whereas I'm like, so she always finds the blessing in things. And I don't do it enough, but writing in a gratitude journal,
Mm.
every little thing that happens good to you a day. Hey, I pulled up to the parking meter and there was 10 minutes left on the parking meter.
Yeah.
That's a blessing.
Right.
Whatever it is. And we just have to, it goes back to when, just growing up in, a middle class neighborhood, which today would be considered, probably low income class.
Right.
But, if you had a car, if you had
Hmm.
a home, if you were able to go on vacation, for a couple weeks, if you were able to send your kid to college, that was considered success. Now people's definition of success is so much different than that.
Oh,
And there are a lot of people struggling. A lot of people struggling. But so I think that we always have to stop and be grateful for what we have,
it it sounds so simple, but it is so powerfully true.
Yeah.
Having those gratitudes and having that check of, man, I'm just glad to be up, because you're right. Like when I start bitching about something, Shaun, then I see the person in a wheelchair and I think to myself, Matt,
Right.
you have it all. Like,
Right. Right.
and
Right. It's like, what is your definition of success?
right.
And I remember, I'll never forget. I was on assignment at Access Hollywood. I was leaving the Nokia Theater, Staples Center, one of the buildings down there. Was leaving, and I think it was covering some award show, and there were a group of people behind the barricade, and security was kind of leading me out so I can kind of get through the crowd. And there was this guy that was leaning, he was behind the barricade, and he looked at me and he said, "You have a really nice life." And the way he said it was so, it just like, I kind of looked at him, and it was almost like an angel saying, "Don't forget, you're very blessed. You have a really nice life." And a lot of people would love to have the life that you have. Um, and so I have to remember, and all of us do, the moments of, my mother says, would you, if somebody said, Matt, okay, you can trade all of your problems for that person's problems.
Hmm.
Okay. So all of the problems that person has, you get those and you can give all of yours to them. Would you do it?
Wow.
It's like,
Wow.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think so, because that would be really scary, because you have no idea what other people are dealing with.
You don't.
Listen, I know too many rich people who
Oh,
are unhappy. Trust me.
well, we haven't even gotten to this
Right.
amazing book that you wrote, which I've read, and I have read this, and yes, and I can't. I would recommend this, even though. So this was written in 2009, right?
2009, way 2009.
And I
Yes.
recently just read this because I knew, and I think this, what you have here, Shaun, I think it pertains more today than it
Mhm.
even did, because I get a kick because you write in this like you had Facebook and MySpace at the time. And I take, you talked about social media and like times it by 100.
Yeah.
And now my daughter's like, Dad, when you're done talking, and she had a question she wanted to answer. I have a 14-year-old daughter,
Oh,
but and she's like, Dad, I get that book when you're done with that. And I go, yeah.
oh, that's so sweet.
But and I totally want to get to this. There's so many things I want to get to with you, Shaun, but you're on that plane to Access Hollywood in 1999 to
1999.
to interview. Did you know at that time, like, hey, this could really be a game changer for me? Because you really had what, Entertainment Tonight and Access Hollywood, right?
That was it back then. That was it. And then we didn't have, like, when your concept of a national show, unlike now, like I can watch any show that's in any, city or whatever.
Right.
But back then you couldn't. So, I remember when I got the call from my agent saying that I got the job at Access Hollywood, I was like, holy moly, I couldn't believe it. And when I had auditioned, I was looking around the studio saying, oh my gosh, I cannot believe that I'm actually sitting here on this show that I have watched. And it was, so it was a really big, that getting that show back then was a really big deal at that time, because it was just only one of two shows that was really
Huge.
doing entertainment. So, and it was like the hometown girl in Detroit did well. And so, yeah, that was a really, really big deal back then.
And you transitioned there, and was it a whole new set of, when you made that leap, was it a whole new set of stresses and challenges that come up? Like, is it true, Shaun, when people say to every level there's another devil?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I like that. Every level there's another
And that's
devil.
not mine, but I've heard that
Yeah,
before. And
absolutely. No, yeah, there
I
were
think of people like you in that.
tons of challenges. This is before Me Too. This is before
Oh,
like anybody listened to, women saying, that's not, supposed to happen, So, but for the most part, it was, I was there for 16 years. And so
yep.
for the most part, it was, a great, great experience. There were a lot of things that, places I got to see, where that I
Right.
traveled to. But yeah, there were a lot of stresses. A lot of stresses. Oh, look at
I have to share this with you. This is one of my favorite pictures from Access Hollywood.
that. Wait a minute, I gotta put on my glasses.
And this is me, and this is the amazing Shaun Robinson.
Look at that. Oh my God.
And
Well,
we're at
at the
2000.
Oscars?
This was the 2002 Vanity Fair Oscar party. And I had the privilege to shadow you that night and to work behind. So I would be behind the scenes. And as you were interviewing stars, I would be writing down. But I have such a big smile here on my face because it was it's a highlight. And it was I love that I have this picture with you.
That is
there in
great.
2002.
That is great. You got to send me a copy of that.
I'm going to. It was Mark Noble. Mark Noble. My goodness. Sorry.
Did
Mr.
Mark Noble take that picture?
Mark Noble took the picture. He was
Oh my
there.
God.
And
Oh my gosh.
I love that guy. And we still stay in touch. And
That is amazing.
yes.
That's
And
amazing.
so shout out to you, Mark Noble. But
Shout out to Mark Noble.
I want to include during this time too, like you're traveling to, like, I read that you were hosting Oprah's Leadership Academy for Girls in South, like it was in 2007 in Johannesburg. And
So yeah, we covered that. I covered Oprah Winfrey's opening of her Leadership Academy for Girls in Johannesburg. That was one of the highlights. Loved doing that. There was so many highlights. Obviously meeting stars, but also
Sure.
going places like, I remember being on the Great Wall of China, during the Beijing Olympics,
Amazing.
going to Dubai, going to just really all over the world. So that was really a wonderful experience. And it, yeah, I go back to, just, I was glad that my parents got to see me, you know, that was
That'd be
really
so cool.
important. Yeah, that they were able to turn on the TV, even though they were all the way in Detroit, Michigan, they got to turn on the TV and see the little girl.
I,
So
the
that was really,
pride that they must have, that
yeah,
they must have
yeah,
felt like,
yes.
and that was to your journey up to this point. Do you feel it was just pure, like, you just seem to have a drive, Shaun, like this steady drive? Have you always had that, or did you just
So
along the way just build that confidence? Like what?
yeah, yeah, I think I did always have a drive. I used to always say, um, and this, it's funny because even before Access Hollywood was on the air, I used to always say, "Oh, I want to do a show like Entertainment Tonight." I used to always say that. And then, Access Hollywood came on, and I was like, "Oh, yeah, I would, love to be on that show." So, it's just about, it's about drive. There's so many times that people told me I couldn't accomplish something. I remember I even told somebody I wanted to be on a show like Entertainment Tonight. They were like, "Oh, no, 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 Shaun, don't, stay in local news. They
Yeah.
don't have many Black people on
Yeah.
shows like that. So don't even try to reach that high." Yeah, people told me that a lot. So it's about shutting out the naysayers and, um, and just really believing that if you work really hard and put in the work, and you're a good person, that you're going to make it.
You've led in so many ways, not only from a female perspective, but from an African American perspective, and all of these things, and people saying, but how did initially, when you're taking those hits like that, was there any, do you feel like people are kind of born with like a quote unquote thicker skin? Or do you feel like it is something you just are developing along the way? Just say, okay,
Yeah,
this hurts. Like
yeah,
but is you use that as the motivational factor to say, hey, director in Flint,
right,
Michigan, sorry, but how did things turn out? And I don't know this
right.
person. I'm not
Yeah,
trying to
yeah, yeah,
speak. You will.
yeah. I think that we all have to battle microaggressions,
Mm,
macroaggressions in our life. We all have had setbacks. I don't know of anybody who hasn't had a setback.
mm.
Um, where does it come from? The, the will to keep pushing. And, once again, I thank my parents for telling me that I could do it, that I could, just keep going, despite what anybody says. Um, you just maybe is it nurture or nature? I don't know. It could be a little of both.
Yeah.
Um, just like with social media. I mean, it's just like, oh, Eve. I mean, like it's like, oh my God, like
It
right, there's
scares the
like,
crap out of me. Just for my kids. I'm like,
it's
give
just
them a fighting chance.
right. It's like, good Lord.
Yeah.
And so like now you just kind of you just kind of have to roll with it. And then also, you make it not personal,
Mm,
because if you don't have confidence in me, that doesn't have anything to do with me. It really has to do with you and what you feel like your limitations may be. Um, or so it takes a good network. It takes a good village. It takes a village to raise a child. So, I had a village around me that kept pushing me, kept pushing me, kept pushing me. Thank goodness I had that, because that gave me, every time they filled me up and somebody tried to knock me down, I might get knocked down, but I got back up because I had that village around me, pulling me up and cheering me on.
Do you ever stop and realize, holy cow, like I did this? Because it is remarkable. And I don't say that as an understatement. Mm-hmm. Do you ever stop and say, or are you just wired to say, we're going to keep going?
Well, I think, when people say to me, somebody was interviewing me and they said, Shaun, you really could write the book on new chapters, and I like to think of new chapter, next chapters, new chapters, because there's a picture I have of my grandmother. She's just back when my grandmother, God rest her soul, had black hair, dark hair. So she was young. She was like early 50s. Okay. And she's in the garden. She got her apron on. She's gardening like she had called it a day. We can't afford to do that now. We still have bills to pay. So we can't afford to retire at 40 or 50. So I think that the fact that, I was on a, popular show and then have been able to transition to do other things, to do additional things, to do, producing and more hosting and, starting my foundation. It doesn't stop like this. That was one chapter. We did that. I came at the right time. I came at a time when entertainment shows were at their peak. Okay. Yeah. It's obviously different now. Beyonce releases an album. She just puts it on Instagram and that's all. She doesn't even have to talk to anybody to do it. It wasn't like that when we first started. It's like the stars had to come to us to talk about their new project, their new movie or album or, television show. So, I came there at a great time. And then, when I'm looking at what is the next, what is the next, and then being able to create opportunities. And that's one thing, I tell people today, as frustrating as social media is, it gives you the opportunity to create new chapters and to, to grow your audience and do things that you never thought you could do. So I'm very, very thankful that I've had, keep getting these opportunities, in part because I, still work very hard, but also, position myself to be in the right places.
And to that point, like in that transition, so you're going through Access Hollywood 16 years. How do you know, Shaun, when it's time? Like, how is it internally, or how do you know I gotta go?
It's so funny because there are some people say, why just stay so long? So you get both. Why just stay so long? I just stay so long. 16 years is a long time. It's a long time.
But it's a testament. I think that's like, again, another record breaking. I think you're one of the longest running hosts.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. And just the world, once again, the world is changing. And there are so many other things that one can do. Yeah. There's so many other things that one can do. And so, taking that leap and, saying, okay, God, I know you got me. You got to have faith. You got me. And, he always catches me. God always catches me when I take a leap.
So you can jump without a safety net.
Well, here's one thing. You have to, I don't suggest people just do that.
Yeah.
You have to have nest egg, you have to have some fallback money. You've got to have, a cushion. You've got to have all that. However, I'm seeing more and more people do it, especially since the pandemic. They're like, forget this. I want to leave. I want to do my own business. I want to try my own thing. You have a lot of people who are doing that. And Matt, as far as we know, we only have one life, as far
Oh,
as we know. And so you better spend it trying to do something that makes you happy.
amen to that. I I've thought about that a lot recently with some, some recent funerals and stuff, that we do have only one life. And
Yeah.
your life, Shaun, in another truly like amazing thing is you see celebrities, or you see people that have great careers, but they might spike and they might go back down, and they might spike, go back down. Like, if I were to graph your trajectory, it just seems just a strong, it's almost like you're on this road to self-actualization, truly. Like, because your show's in 216 countries, 44 different languages translated. I mean, it is with 90 Day Fiancé, and it's truly amazing. But do you what do you think is your testament to that? Because that's like you said. I think I
Yeah.
love a quote you gave once in an interview. You said, "You know what? It's interesting because you might see someone that wins a Grammy Award, and the next year they
They
can't
can't
get
get
arrested."
arrested. They
I
can't get arrested
I
next year.
love your quote on that.
No, yeah. I mean, it happens all the time. So many times I was on the red carpet interviewing somebody who was the toast of the town, and next
Right.
year they can't get a job, all that. So like with it's so interesting with 90 Day Fiance. When I used to do uh reunion shows for TLC. I did a few of their other reunion shows, and
Yep.
this opportunity came along, and I was like, I had never heard of 90 Day Fiance. I was like, okay, well, send me some clips of the show, and I thought, okay, this is probably the last couple seasons, I'll do it. And then here we are, like 10 years later, something like that. No, maybe, well, yeah, I think maybe almost, wait, maybe 8 years later. That and it keeps growing, it just keeps growing. It's 200 and over 214 countries and territories, translated in over 44 languages, shot in over 56 countries. I mean, it is truly remarkable what 90 Day Fiance has become. Truly remarkable. And so, so yes, I am thankful for the opportunity. Sometimes, I have to be the calm in the eye of the storm.
I see it. I've
You know,
watched so
I've
many.
got to be yeah, I'm like,
I've seen
okay.
those walk offs, and you do such a good job of just saying, "Okay, listen,
So
let's."
yeah, let's settle down, folks.
Because
So
these are people. I mean, it really is thinking of the psychology of this, and you've mentioned this on talk shows and everything else. Like, these are people that knew each other before they came on the show, and
yeah, and that's
right,
the difference between 90 Day Fiance and the other shows, about other relationship
right,
shows. The show doesn't put these people together.
right,
They don't cast and say, okay, you're cute, you cute, you just all
right.
come. No, these people were in relationships before they came to us.
That's
And
right.
so there's that authenticity about, with the show. So, yeah, and it's as wild as it gets. And I even had to lean into that, Matt, because I was the journalist. I was like, oh,
Yeah,
I can do reality. And then reality started passing everybody up. Reality was saying, "Oh, okay, you think reality's going away? Watch this." Okay, and so
unbelievable.
I had to kind of surrender to the fact that okay, reality's here to stay.
Okay.
So I can, be a part of it or not, so yeah, so that opportunity, it's just, and my mother loves the show. My mother, she will call
Yeah.
me and tell me about the latest gossip on the show, and she just absolutely loves it. So I'm glad that it really resonates with people and that people find the show so interesting.
It's a worldwide success, and it's been so fun. I just naturally brag about you all the time. I'm like, that's Shaun. Like, I know her. I used to work. It's so great. And
That's so funny.
I know, like, when you were on, again, going back to, there was a couple reasons why I really loved your interview, or when your appearance on the Jennifer Hudson show. And
Uh-huh.
one, obviously, with your immense success with 9 Day Fiance. But I loved the full circle that would come around. And you, again, I think this is a gift of yours, and it's like a pattern that I see is like you were uplifting Miss Hudson when you were like, I spoke to Aretha Franklin and she
Yeah,
wanted you to be
right.
on there.
Yes.
And just like me, I mean, I'm not anywhere close to Miss Hudson, but just like me, like I admire, like she's like, I'm the one that admires you, Shaun.
Well,
Like,
thank you.
did you, did you ever, was there a time in your life where you saw that switch where, hey, I was trailblazing. I've been leading this charge, and you looked up to other people, but have you ever stopped and said, well, okay, now I've got a lot of people that look to me, and has that ever hit you, or does that ever hit you?
It's nice. It's being first of all being interviewed like this is always kind of weird to me because I'm used to doing the interviews. But yeah, seeing people that I've interviewed throughout the years, and then you develop a relationship with them, and then you're able to come back together and talk about different stories. And like Jennifer Hudson, she's just great. I just love Jennifer, and I'm so happy for all of her success.
Yeah.
So does it hit me? Like I don't get I don't get starstruck
Ah,
much. I mean, there's certain people like Al Pacino got me starstruck when I saw Al Pacino. I was like really, really starstruck when I saw him. But I don't get really starstruck anymore because I know they're just people. They're people with problems. They might be known or they might have money, but you know, they still
that's
have.
what's so powerful about this book that you wrote
Yeah,
is I love how they are like, that's what rings true of the many people that you interviewed. And you're like, that's the theme. It's like, we're all human beings, and we're
yeah.
all, these are universal, beautiful things that we all wrestle with in our life. I want to share one of the biggest things that hit me in this book, if I can,
Okay.
if it's all right with you. And you talked about, and it's along the lines of what you're saying, but it's on page 63. You said, playing the social circuit, so to speak, is fast paced and very exciting, but sometimes it can leave me feeling strangely uncomfortable. You can be around 1,000 people and still feel very alone, not really part of anything here in Hollywood. While there are plenty of very decent and interesting people who simply like to mingle at these events, there are also many who seem to need to be at that function, hobnobbing, etc. I find these folks are missing something inside, as if they have to be connected, kind of what we were talking about earlier. They want to fit in so badly that they've forgotten that they have something to offer. And the reason why I circled that is I have felt this at many functions that I've gone to, even not in, I mean, there's something where I can see in my limited time of being in some of these environments, if you don't have that center, or if you don't have that what's really filling you up, how that gap inside could just fill.
Yeah,
I just,
yeah. You see it over and over again in Hollywood, or doesn't even have to be Hollywood.
right.
You can be in a room with so many people and then still feel alone,
Yes.
or that you don't matter. I've certainly felt that way,
Which is
and
so hard to believe because you have,
it
I
shouldn't
mean,
be. It shouldn't be. It really shouldn't be. You know, I think we've seen from social media how people can
yeah.
put on a facade, and because you feel like nobody wants to hear me complaining, or nobody cares, or nobody would help even if I did reach out. So you see that a lot. People, they have one face on social media, and then
Mm,
what they're feeling inside is something totally different. And that's why, when I wrote the book, Exactly As I Am, the true self-esteem is coming from a much different place, a much deeper place. It's the feeling that, you, wherever you are, you belong,
mm.
and you are worthy because you were born, because God has touched you and said, that you are worth being here.
Mm.
So you don't get if you continue to try to get your validation from human beings, you will always be seeking validation.
And thank you for being a role model to that. And can you lead into a little bit of talking to Shaun for Foundation?
Yes, yes. The Shaun Foundation for Girls.
Yes.
That's my baby, my big project. So I started Shaun Foundation for Girls 8 years ago, and we are a 501c3. We are our mission is to, I didn't want to reinvent the wheel. People always ask me, Shaun, I want to work with your girls. I want to work with your girls. I want to work with your girls. And I'm like, we don't work directly with girls. We support the organizations that work directly with girls. And we work in 5 key categories: SHAUN, acronym of my name, STEM, health, arts, unity, and neighborhoods. So if there's a nonprofit that is working in one of those key areas, uplifting underserved and underrepresented girls and young women, we would possibly be a resource for them to give them a grant, capacity building, whatever they need. And the reason this is so important, Matt, is that we know that nonprofits that are led by women, nonprofits that are led by women of color, and nonprofits that service girls of color get a fraction of the available philanthropic dollars. So we're trying to level the playing field and make sure that these organizations have the resources that they need so they can reach out into the community and affect more girls and uplift more lives. And we need to really celebrate the people who are the boots on the ground, the soldiers on the front lines, the people who are working directly with girls to pull them out of poverty, to give them the resources that they need to truly succeed. So I'm happy to be in this position. You know, we are a hybrid, so we have to raise money to give away these grants. So I'm always in fundraising mode. But it is truly gratifying work when you see these organizations and how they're affecting the lives of young girls. And even if they only change the life of one girl, that one girl can then go on and change the world. You just never know. So yes, I'm really thankful. And people who want to find out more about Shaun Foundation for Girls, you go to shaunfoundationforgirls.org. And if you want to donate, shaunfoundationforgirls.org/donate. And we take all donations. And when you give, your gift becomes part of this larger pool that we use to find incredible nonprofits around the country that are working with girls and help change their lives.
And you can be sure those funds are going to those girls. And to your point, and I'll make sure to put all of that information in our description here on this show too. Okay. I'm trying to be respectful of your time, and I could talk to you for another 3 hours, but I have to ask you the question my daughter wanted me to ask you, Shaun.
Okay.
So my daughter is 14. Her name is Samantha. And she says, Miss Robinson, what has been your biggest challenge or obstacle you have had to overcome to get to stardom?
So, Samantha, I think the biggest obstacle has been what your dad just talked about, and believing that I am worthy of the many wonderful things that, come my way. Oftentimes, there are attacks on our self-esteem, and they come in so many different ways. And it's hard not to internalize that. If somebody says mean things to you, it's hard not to internalize that. But what you have to do is you have to look inside. And first of all, you have to, for me, you have to have faith in something higher than yourself, a higher power. And if you do, you know that higher power has given you all the time the strength that you need to keep going. So doesn't matter what anybody says, it is about the fact that you are valuable and worthy because you were born. So that is my advice.
Beautiful. She's going to be so excited. Thank you for
sharing
that.
I'm glad.
And I have to ask, because I'm trying to be respectful of your time, but I always like to ask, what Miss Shaun Robinson, what do you want to be remembered for in this life?
I want to be remembered as a person who really tried to help other people. That hopefully through my foundation, long after I'm gone, that light will keep shining and that there will still be lives positively affected by the work that I do. So that's what I would say.
Well, I think you are absolutely succeeding in that. And
Thank you.
I want to again say um, thank you for touching my life, Shaun,
You're
because
welcome, Matt.
when I reached out to say, will you listen to this music and will you send a quote, and you were like, absolutely. And it for you to take your time during this when you have one of the world's lead, I mean, you're like beating Yellowstone off the charts on Sundays, like it is such a true honor. So
Thank,
I hope
thank
this
you
was
very
worth
much.
it for you.
Thank you. I am so proud of you, my friend.
Thank
You
you.
keep shining. You keep touching the world with your music, your beautiful music, because music changes lives. Music uplifts people. And so I am so proud of you, and I wish you more success and happiness than your heart can hold.
It's a beautiful way to end. Thank you,
Thank you,
Shaun.
Matt, so much. Okay. Bye, everybody. Thank you.